What if everything you've been taught about manifestation was wrong? Neville Goddard is widely regarded as one of the most profound spiritual teachers of the 20th century. His lectures, writings, and ideas have inspired countless individuals to explore the untapped power of their imagination and subconscious mind. His core message is disarmingly simple. Imagine the reality you desire as if it is already yours. Feel it deeply, and the physical world will inevitably conform. Yet, despite the clarity and simplicity of his teachings, the truth remains that the vast majority of people, around 99%, do not achieve the results they seek. Why is that? What are they misunderstanding? How are they misapplying his powerful methods? One of the first and most critical mistakes people make when attempting to use Neville's techniques is failing to truly understand the meaning of living in the end. It is not enough to simply think about the desired outcome. Neville emphasized feeling as though the desired reality is already true. For most, imagination is treated like daydreaming, a light, fleeting visualization that lacks emotional depth. But Neville's instruction demands an intense emotional experience. You must so fully embody the wish fulfilled that it becomes more real to you internally than the world of facts that surrounds you. Many people imagine something they want, but immediately after, they allow doubts, fears, and current reality to dominate their mind. They say, "I am rich," but feel poor. They affirm, "I am loved," but internally still feel abandoned or lonely. This emotional contradiction neutralizes the imagined reality. Neville taught that the subconscious accepts what you feel as true, not what you mechanically repeat. Therefore, unless the imagined scene is imbued with powerful feeling, it will not be impressed upon the subconscious, and it will not externalize. Another critical mistake is the misuse of repetition. Repeating an affirmation over and over without belief, without genuine emotion, is largely ineffective. Many fall into the trap of thinking quantity will replace quality, that if they just say, "I am successful 1,000 times, it will happen." But Neville's emphasis was never on the number of repetitions. It was on the quality of the emotional experience. A single moment of pure, unquestioned feeling can outweigh hours of mechanical repetition. A major factor causing failure is the obsession with how the desire will manifest. People, driven by impatience and doubt, constantly wonder how their dream will come true. They start plotting, scheming, manipulating circumstances, or searching for signs in the external world. But Neville was clear. The how belongs to God. Your job is not to figure out the how. Your job is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain loyal to it. When you interfere with the process by trying to control or predict the unfolding events, you only slow down or even block the manifestation. Closely related to this is the mistake of seeking signs too early. People often look for evidence immediately after a session of imaginal work. They check their bank account, their phone, their social media, seeking confirmation that something has changed. But this behavior reveals that they are still anchored in the old reality. Neville taught that faith means persisting in the assumption despite the complete absence of evidence. Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality, he said. It is the ability to walk as though your world has already shifted, even when everything around you appears unchanged. Another pervasive mistake is lack of persistence. Neville repeatedly stressed the importance of persistence. It is not enough to imagine once and then forget. You must persist in the assumption until it hardens into fact. Most people, however, give up too quickly. They imagine for a day or a week, and when nothing seems to happen, they declare the method ineffective and return to their old thought patterns. This inconsistency fractures the creative power and ensures that the old reality remains dominant. A subtle but deadly error is identifying with the old self even after imagining. After a session of vivid imagining, people often revert back to their habitual thoughts, emotions, and reactions that belong to the version of themselves they are trying to transcend. Neville emphasized the necessity of embodying the new self completely, thinking, feeling, acting from the state of the wish fulfilled throughout the day. It's not enough to imagine being healthy for a few minutes at night and then spend the day complaining about aches and pains. Every thought, every emotional response must align with the new reality you have accepted. Many people also fail because they treat imagination as fantasy rather than creative act. They see their imaginal scenes as mere entertainment, enjoyable but disconnected from real life. Neville was emphatic. Imagination is not a passive activity, it is the only reality. Your inner world creates your outer world. When you regard your imaginal acts as causal, as seeds planted in the soil of reality, you begin to treat them with the seriousness and reverence they deserve. One of the more insidious mistakes is emotional neutrality. People imagine success, love, wealth, or health without infusing their scenes with the appropriate emotional tone. They create dry, lifeless imaginations that have no vibrational power. Neville insisted that the emotional tone, joy, gratitude, love, excitement, is the signal the subconscious responds to. Without feeling, the scene is dead. With feeling, it becomes alive and inevitable. Another common error is using imagination reactively rather than proactively. Many only turn to imaginal work when faced with problems, using it as a last resort to fix what's broken. But Neville taught that imagination should be a constant creative force, not a crisis management tool. You must live from imagination habitually, proactively building your desired world, rather than reacting to unwanted circumstances. Additionally, many people practice scattered, unfocused imagining. They change their desires frequently, shift their assumptions daily, and thus send conflicting messages to the subconscious. One day they desire wealth, the next they desire a simple life, free from material concerns. Such instability prevents any firm manifestation from taking root. Neville emphasized the importance of clarity and consistency, selecting your aim clearly and sticking to it unwaveringly. A profound misunderstanding lies in underestimating the power of assumptions. People assume failure, assume difficulty, assume delay, often unconsciously, and then wonder why their desires are delayed. Neville's law of assumption teaches that whatever you assume to be true becomes your reality. Assumptions are powerful creative acts, whether deliberate or unconscious. Therefore, conscious control of assumptions is critical. Every assumption you hold about yourself, about others, about life, is sculpting your future experience. One of the saddest mistakes is believing that imagination is just in the mind. This belief limits imagination to the realm of personal fantasy, stripping it of its creative potency. Neville asserted that the imagination is divine. It is God in action. To dismiss your imagination as mere mental activity is to deny your creative birthright. When you accept imagination as the one true reality, you align with your highest creative power. Impatience is another great enemy. The modern mind, conditioned by instant gratification, struggles with the idea of gestation, the natural period between planting a seed and harvesting the fruit. Neville often compared the process of manifestation to pregnancy. After the seed is planted, it must be nurtured with faith and patience. Constantly digging up the seed to check its progress only kills it. Trust that what you have imagined is on its way, even if no outer evidence is yet visible. Fear is another massive block. People allow fear to dominate their inner conversations. They imagine worst-case scenarios, replay old traumas, and dwell on what they do not want. Since the subconscious accepts whatever is consistently impressed upon it, positive or negative, fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Neville urged students to discipline the inner conversation, to dwell only on what they wish to experience. Another frequent mistake is confusing hope with faith. Hope is uncertain. It says, maybe it will happen. Faith is absolute. It says, it has already happened. Neville taught that you must move beyond hoping and into the conviction of being. Feel the reality of your desire so deeply that doubt becomes impossible. Many also fall into the trap of treating the physical world as the cause rather than the effect. They think circumstances create their state of mind, when in fact the reverse is true. Neville emphasized that the world is a mirror reflecting your inner state. When you change within, the mirror must change. Waiting for the mirror to change first is futile. A critical psychological block is living in a state of lack. People think about their desires from the perspective of not having them. They pray for what they lack, wish for what they lack, visualize from a state of longing. But the state of lack only perpetuates more lack. You must enter into the feeling of already having, already being, already experiencing your fulfilled desire. A final and profound mistake is forgetting who you really are. Neville taught that you are not a powerless being at the mercy of circumstances. You are God, dreaming this life into existence through your imagination. When you truly grasp this truth, not intellectually, but viscerally, everything changes. You realize that you are the operant power. Nothing and no one outside of you has authority over your world unless you consent to it. Another crucial reason why most people fail to apply Neville Goddard's techniques effectively is treating imagination as something secondary rather than primary. They view the physical world as more real and their imagination as just imagination. But Neville insisted that imagination is the only reality, and the physical world is simply its shadow. If you give more weight to appearances than to your inner world, you reverse the creative order and fall into powerlessness. The practice demands a radical shift in perspective, seeing the imaginal world as cause and the physical world as effect. One practical way Neville suggested reinforcing this perspective was through revision. Revision is one of his most powerful and often overlooked techniques. If an undesirable event occurs, instead of accepting it as final, you reimagine it the way you would have preferred it to happen. For example, if you had an argument with a friend, you mentally rewrite the conversation to reflect harmony and understanding. This act of mental revision changes the seed planted in your subconscious and thereby alters the future outcomes related to that event. Most people, however, replay negative events as they happened, reinforcing undesirable realities. Revision is not merely wishful thinking, it is an active creative process that reshapes the past in consciousness, and thereby the future. Neville emphasized that the past is not fixed. It lives within you as memory, and memory is malleable. By changing your inner experience of the past, you change its causal impact on your future. Those who fail to revise past injuries, betrayals, or failures often remain trapped in their effects without realizing that liberation was always within their grasp. Another issue is that people often attempt to manifest things they don't truly believe they can have. Deep down, they still see their desires as unattainable or themselves as unworthy. They imagine wealth, but carry a subconscious identity of poverty. They visualize love, but feel unlovable. The inner contradiction ensures failure. Manifestation is not about forcing reality into compliance. It is about aligning your inner self-concept with your desired reality. You must become, inside, the person who naturally has what you seek. Neville taught that you can never manifest what you are not conscious of being. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. A related mistake is trying to manifest out of desperation. Desperation carries the energy of lack, fear, and anxiety, all of which impress the subconscious negatively. When you approach imaginal work from a place of emotional neediness, you inadvertently magnify the very absence you are trying to eliminate. Neville encouraged approaching manifestation from a place of calm confidence, joy, and playful expectation. The feeling should be one of satisfaction, as if the desire is already a present reality. Consistency between thought, emotion, and action is another critical factor. Some people try to imagine wealth but live daily lives of scarcity thinking. cutting corners, acting out of fear, speaking words of lack. This misalignment creates inner confusion and weakens the subconscious imprint. Your daily actions must affirm your new state, even if only in small symbolic ways. You must act as if your wish is already fulfilled, not to trick the universe, but to reinforce your own inner conviction. Another deep error lies in underestimating the power of the state. Neville emphasized that everything in life flows from the state you occupy. States are psychological conditions or identities you assume. The state of being poor, healthy, lonely, joyful. These are mental and emotional positions you live from. To change your reality, you must change your state. You must move into the state of the wish fulfilled and dwell there persistently. Many people attempt to bring a new experience into an old state, which is impossible. A new reality demands a new state. States are entered primarily through imagination and feeling. When you close your eyes and fully imagine yourself in your desired state, feeling the emotions, seeing the scenes, hearing the sounds, you step into a new state. If you maintain it persistently, your world must shift to reflect it. But if you imagine briefly and then return to the state of lack or fear, you reinforce the old state. One important practice Neville taught for stabilizing a new state is SATs, state akin to sleep. This is the drowsy, relaxed state you naturally enter before falling asleep. In this twilight zone, the critical mind is quieted, and the subconscious is most receptive. Neville advised using this period to imagine the wish fulfilled vividly and emotionally. Done consistently, this impresses the new state deeply into the subconscious and accelerates manifestation. Another failure point is confusing visual clarity with emotional clarity. Some people worry that they cannot visualize vividly, that they cannot see detailed pictures in their mind's eye. Neville reassured students that vividness of sight is not essential. What matters is vividness of feeling. Even a blurry or fleeting mental image, if charged with strong emotion, is effective. The subconscious responds to emotional content, not visual detail. Therefore, feeling is the true secret. Another deep-seated issue is getting trapped by the senses. Neville constantly warned against the evidence of the senses. When you look at the current reality through the physical senses and judge by appearances, you empower the old state. Manifestation demands a blindness to facts, a refusal to accept anything other than the fulfilled desire as true. This is not denial, but a disciplined choice to trust imagination over appearances. Persistence in this discipline separates the successful from the unsuccessful. One brilliant insight Neville offered is that life always mirrors your inner conversations. The silent conversations you carry within yourself all day, the complaints, the worries, the affirmations, the self-talk, these are the true architects of your experience. Most people are not conscious of their inner conversations, and thus they unconsciously recreate the same realities over and over. To change your life, you must change your inner speech. You must speak inwardly as the person you wish to be. Neville's own life offered profound demonstrations of his teachings. He described how he imagined returning to Barbados even when there was no money, no opportunity, and no logical way. He persisted in imagining himself already in Barbados, smelling the sea, feeling the warmth, and seeing his family. Within a short time, through a series of miraculous events, he received passage back home. His story is a vivid testimony that imaginal acts, faithfully persisted in, produce physical facts. A fascinating and often overlooked aspect of Neville's teaching is the concept of bridge of incidents. After assuming the wish fulfilled, the world orchestrates a series of events, often strange, unexpected, and sometimes even unpleasant, that lead you to the fulfillment of your desire. People often resist or misinterpret these incidents because they expect a straight, comfortable path. But Neville emphasized trusting the unfolding without judgment. The bridge is not to be predicted or controlled. Your only job is to remain faithful to the end. Another reason why 99% fail is emotional instability. They allow external events to dictate their mood, oscillating between hope and despair, faith and doubt. Neville taught that emotional mastery is essential. You must anchor yourself emotionally in the end state, regardless of temporary appearances. This requires inner strength, patience, and an unwavering trust in the process. One of the deepest teachings Neville offered is that everyone is yourself pushed out. The people you encounter, the relationships you experience, are reflections of your own inner assumptions. If you believe people are untrustworthy, you will meet betrayal. If you assume you are loved and valued, you will encounter affection and respect. This understanding transforms relationships from chaotic accidents into mirrors of self-discovery. When people fail to manifest desired relationships, they often focus on changing the other person rather than changing themselves. Neville taught that the change must occur within. Imagine yourself as already having the love, respect, or friendship you desire, and the outer world must conform. You do not need to force or manipulate others. You simply change your assumption about yourself and others. Another major reason why many fail is the lack of persistence. Neville repeatedly emphasized the importance of persistence in the assumption. It's not about imagining once and then forgetting. It's about living in the end every day, despite appearances. The imagination must become a habitual dwelling place, not an occasional visitor. Those who succeed are those who persist, not necessarily those who are most skilled at visualization, but those who refuse to waver. Persistence does not mean effort or strain. It means a quiet, steady assumption of the end fulfilled, an inner knowing that does not seek validation from the outside world. Neville often quoted the scripture, "When you pray, believe that you have received, and you shall receive." The belief must come first. The evidence will follow. Most people invert the order. They wait for evidence before believing, and thus remain stuck. A subtle but deadly mistake is praying to an external God. Neville radically reinterpreted Scripture to reveal that God is not an external being, but your own wonderful human imagination. When you pray to a distant God, you disempower yourself and deny your own creative capacity. True prayer, according to Neville, is the movement of imagination. It is feeling yourself to be what you desire to be, and thanking your inner self for it already being so. Understanding the nature of God as imagination is crucial. It removes the sense of separation between you and your desire. It places the creative power squarely within you. There is no need to plead, bargain, or hope. You simply assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and in that assumption, you move into union with God. Another overlooked aspect of Neville's teaching is the role of self-concept. Your overall self-image acts as a governor over what you can and cannot manifest. If you see yourself as limited, unlucky, undeserving, no technique will override that foundational self-concept. Therefore, deep transformation often requires not just visualizing specific outcomes, but rebuilding your identity at a fundamental level. To shift your self-concept, Neville advised repeated imaginal acts where you see yourself as already the ideal version you wish to embody. Over time, these imaginal acts solidify into a new self-image, and reality conforms accordingly. Change is not imposed from the outside. It emerges from within. Many people fail because they seek techniques instead of transformation. They look for the perfect method, the right words, the magic visualization, treating manifestation like a mechanical process. But Neville taught that it is being, not doing, that creates reality. Who you are inwardly determines what you experience outwardly. Techniques are only tools. The true power lies in your state of being. Another pitfall is obsessing over results. Constantly checking if it's working implies doubt and impatience, which reinforce the absence of the desired state. Neville advised forgetting the desire after impressing it upon the subconscious, not out of indifference, but out of confidence that it is already done. Obsession delays manifestation because it signals to the subconscious that you don't truly believe it's complete. An important insight is understanding the difference between desire and assumption. Desire alone does not manifest. Assumption does. You may desire health, wealth, love, but if you assume sickness, poverty, and loneliness at a subconscious level, those assumptions dominate. To manifest, you must bridge the gap between your desires and your assumptions through persistent imaginal work. One of the most powerful ideas Neville taught is that consciousness is the only reality. This means everything you experience, your body, your relationships, your environment, is a projection of your consciousness. By changing your consciousness, you inevitably change your world. There is no separation between mind and matter. The outer world is mind objectified. This understanding brings incredible freedom, but also immense responsibility. You can no longer blame circumstances, other people, or fate. You are the operant power. This can be daunting at first, but ultimately it is the key to mastery. Freedom comes when you recognize that nothing needs to change out there, only within yourself. Another mistake is thinking the law only works sometimes. In reality, the law is always working. You are always manifesting, whether consciously or unconsciously. Life is not random. Every event, every encounter, every condition is the outpicturing of your inner state. The question is not whether you are manifesting, but what you are manifesting. To master manifestation, you must become conscious of the process. You must deliberately plant the seeds you wish to harvest, rather than letting the weeds of fear, doubt, and negative assumptions grow unchecked. Mastery is conscious creation. A key practice Neville recommended is living in the end. This means assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled now, not waiting for external confirmation. It means mentally and emotionally inhabiting the reality you desire until it feels natural. When the new state feels natural, manifestation is inevitable. Living in the end also means letting go of how the desire will unfold. The how is not your concern. Your job is to persist in the assumption of the end fulfilled. The universe, through infinite intelligence, will orchestrate the bridge of incidents to bring it about. One subtle but profound error is dividing desires into big and small. Many people believe it's easy to manifest a parking space, but hard to manifest $1 million. This belief creates unnecessary resistance. For the subconscious, there is no difference between a small and a large manifestation. The only difference is the resistance you add. To the deeper mind, all things are equally possible. Neville taught that faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. It is persisting in the assumption of the wish fulfilled even when the senses contradict it. Faith is not blind optimism. It is a disciplined inner knowing that imagination creates reality. Those who cultivate this faith move mountains. Those who waver remain trapped by appearances. Another essential point is the role of gratitude. True gratitude is not waiting until you receive what you desire to be thankful. It is feeling gratitude now as if the wish were already fulfilled. Gratitude reinforces the assumption of the end and impresses it more deeply into the subconscious. One of Neville's most famous affirmations is, "Thank you, Father," said after an imaginal act. This simple phrase encapsulates the spirit of gratitude and completion. It signals to the subconscious that the act is finished and accepted. Another major block to manifestation is self-judgment and guilt. If you believe you are unworthy, if you carry guilt for past mistakes, you subconsciously sabotage your desires. Neville taught that forgiveness is crucial, not just of others, but of yourself. You must release the past and accept your divine nature now. You are not your past. You are who you assume yourself to be. Forgiveness, in Neville's teaching, is not moralistic. It is practical. It liberates you from the emotional burdens that anchor you to unwanted realities. By forgiving yourself and others, you free your consciousness to occupy a new state. An advanced understanding Neville shared is the idea that every desire is a divine blueprint. If you desire something sincerely, it means it already exists for you in the realm of imagination. Desire is not a tease, it is a preview of coming attractions. Your job is to accept the desire as already fulfilled and move into the feeling of its realization. When you deny your desires, you deny your divine creative impulse. You were meant to express the fullness of life, to embody joy, love, abundance, creativity. Desires are the language through which the infinite seeks to express itself through you. One final reason why many fail is lack of self-discipline. Manifestation demands a certain mental hygiene, a willingness to guard your thoughts, to refuse to dwell on fear, doubt, and negativity. The undisciplined mind is easily swayed by appearances and emotions. The disciplined mind remains steadfast in the assumption of the wish fulfilled. Neville often compared the mind to a garden. You must actively weed out unwanted thoughts and cultivate the seeds of your desires. Left unattended, the garden becomes overgrown with weeds. Conscious creation requires daily tending of your inner garden. In conclusion, manifestation is not magic, it is law. It operates with mathematical precision according to your inner assumptions, feelings, and imaginal acts. Failure is not a judgment, it is simply the result of misapplication or misunderstanding of the law. Those who succeed are not lucky or special. They are those who have learned to think from the end, to live in the state of the wish fulfilled, to persist despite appearances, to align feeling with assumption, to trust imagination over senses, and to accept themselves as the operant power. If you apply Neville Goddard's teachings with sincerity, discipline, and faith, you will discover for yourself that consciousness truly is the only reality, and that your imagination, when rightly directed, is the key to transforming your world beyond your wildest dreams.